Hello, students. Today we discuss Chapter 2 Thinking Like an Economist. These are the questions that we seek to answer. What are economists' two roles and how do they differ? What are models? How do economists use them? What are the elements of the circular flow diagram? What concepts does the diagram illustrate? How is the production possibilities frontier related to opportunity cost? What other concepts does it illustrate? What is the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics, between positive and normative? Economists play two roles. One, as a scientist, economists seek to explain the world. As a policy advisor, economists try to improve the world. As a scientist, economists employ scientific method. Scientific method involves the dispassionate development and testing of theories about how the world works. Economists make assumptions to study their subject. Assumptions simplify the complex world and make it easier to understand. As an example, when economists study international trade, they assume there are two countries and only two goods. The world is way more complex than that. But economists simplify the world. Economists use models to study economic issues. Models are highly simplified representation of a more complex reality, a simplified picture of reality. Examples of models. A model teeth at the dentist's office, that's a model. A model of human anatomy from high school biology class, that is a model. A roadmap. Remember, a model is a simplified representation of a more complex reality. Let's look at the first model economists use, and that model is called circular flow diagram, a visual model of the economy. Remember, our economy is way too complex. We can't study it. We have to reduce it to a simplified model. And the circular flow diagram shows how dollars flow through markets among households and farms. In our simplified model, there are two decision makers. There are business farms that produce goods and services, and there are households that consume goods and services. These two institutions interact in two different kinds of markets. There is market for goods and services, and there's market for factors of production, or we call them inputs. And as households own factors of production and businesses hire factors of production. And households and business farms interact in two kinds of markets. Households supply factors of production, land and labor and capital, and business farms demand factors of production. And they interact in the factor market for factors of production. So the red flow going from household through factor markets into the business farms is a flow of resources or inputs. Businesses pay for these resources, and the dollar flow is the green flow outside, flowing from business farms through the factor market into the household. is the payment or the cost of production. When businesses hire labor from the household, they pay wages. When businesses hire capital from the household, they pay interest. When business uses land, they pay rent. And of course, business entrepreneurs make profits. These payments flow from business farms and become income to the household. In the market for goods and services, farms supply goods and services. Business farms produce goods and services, and then they sell those goods and services in the market for goods and services for onward transmission into the household. So you see the red flow coming from the farm, that is goods sold, and the red flow continues into the household, that is goods bought. Now, households pay for these goods and services. So you see the green flow, the green arrow is consumption spending by households on goods and services. And this spending flows through the goods market and becomes revenue for the business firm. There you have it, how dollars flow through our economic system. A very simple model of how our economy functions. The second model we're going to look at is production possibilities frontier. It is a graph which shows combinations of output that economy can possibly produce given the available resources and, of course, technology. Now, production possibilities frontier really is a device that illustrates and really clarifies the economic problem, which means limited resources, and so choices must be made. Trade-off. One of the first principle in chapter 1 is that people face trade-offs, nations face trade-offs. So production possibilities frontier is a device that clarifies that concept. So let's use an example. Two goods. This nation that produces only two goods, computers and wheat. And we're only going to use one resource, and that is labor, measured in labor hours. The economy has 50,000 labor hours per month available for production. So let us have a table to demonstrate. As an example, producing one computer requires 100 hours of labor. Producing 1 ton of wheat requires 10 hours of labor. So if we have 50,000 hours of labor and we decide to use those hours to produce computers, that means we're going to have 0 wheat. Okay? And if 100 hours of labor produces 1 computer, the 50,000 labor hours will produce 500 computers. That is just 50,000 divided by 100 gets you 500 computers. But that means you cannot produce any wheat. That means if you want some wheat, you will have to use some of the labor hours to produce wheat. In this example, we are going to use 10,000 labor hours to produce wheat. But that means we no longer have 50,000 for computers. We're going to have 40,000. What about if we want 25? We want to use 25,000 labor hours to produce wheat. We can only use 25,000 for computers. Let us see how that shows on the production column. And as you can see, the trade-off is manifested here. We produce 500 computers, 0 wheat. If we're going to add some wheat, we're going to produce 1,000 tons of wheat. We can only produce 400. Suppose we want to produce 2,500 tons of wheat, we can only produce 250 computers. You can see the trade-off that faces society. You want more wheat, it means less computers. And more computers, it means less wheat. This can be represented in a two-dimensional graph. And in that two-dimensional graph, we measure computers on the horizontal axis and wheat measured in tons on the vertical axis. And as you can see, we have point number A, point number B, point number C, D, and therefore we have a blue straight line that is called production possibilities frontier, a device that illustrates and clarifies the trade-off involved in the process of production and consumption. So, as you can see, it is a straight line, okay? Let us look at an active learning to try to understand what is demonstrated here in this graph. You will see in that example that points on this blue line is attainable and efficient. That's why we call it a frontier. It is a boundary between what is possible and what is not possible. Anything to the right of this straight line is not attainable. Anything to the left or inside the production possibilities frontier is attainable. So on the boundary, it is attainable, it is efficient. On the right is unattainable, on the left is not attainable. So let us see what happens here. On the graph above, find the points that represent 100 computers and 3,000 tons of wheat and label it F. Would it be possible for the economy to produce this combination of the two goods? Why or why not? Then next, find points that represent 300 computers and 3,500 tons of wheat. Label it G. Would it be possible for the economy to produce this combination of the two goods? That is the graph. And if we want point number F that shows 100 computers and 3,000 tons of wheat, what did we say about any point to the left of this curve? Okay, it requires 40,000 labor hours to produce that combination. And that means that point is possible, but not efficient because we could produce more. We're only using 40,000 labor hours and we have 50,000 labor hours. So a point to the left or inside the production possibilities is attainable, but we are underutilizing our resources. Okay, now let us find point number G, 300 computers and 3,500 tons of wheat. It is to the right of this production possibilities frontier. It is not possible. Okay, not possible because the economy only has 50,000, but this combination requires 65,000 labor hours. To the right is not attainable. Okay, so points on the production possibilities frontier is possible and efficient. All resources are fully utilized. Points under the production possibilities frontier, like point number F, is possible, but it's not efficient. Some resources are underutilized. Workers are unemployed. Factories are idle. Points above the production possibilities frontier, like G, are not possible. Okay? Moving along a production possibilities frontier, moving up or down, involves shifting resources from production of one good to the other. Like producing more computers means less tons of wheat, or more tons of wheat means less computer. Society faces trade-off. Getting more of one good requires sacrificing some of the other. The slope of the PPF is the opportunity cost of one good in terms of the other. Let's see how a slope is the opportunity cost. So this is the production possibilities frontier that we just developed. The slope of this straight line is a constant. Any point of this slope is a constant. So we can measure the vertical over horizontal. On the horizontal change is 100. The vertical change is 1000. So you can see from 4 to 5. The slope of this line is a negative slope is 10. What that means is the opportunity cost of one computer is 10 tons of wheat. For this society to produce one computer, it has to give up 10 tons of wheat. That is what that minus 10 is. Okay. Another example, in which country of these two, England and France, in which country is the opportunity cost of clothes lower? Okay. When the slope is steep, the opportunity cost is higher. When the slope is flat, the opportunity cost is lower. So in this example, we will see that England has the lower opportunity cost in the production of cloth because the slope of this production possibilities curve is flatter than in France. Okay? So economic growth. At some point, economy grows. Remember the production possibilities frontier. That is the boundary between what is possible and what is possible. To produce more means you have to have more resources. You have to have more land or more labor or better technology. Something has to happen. And when that happens, the curve shifts out to the right. So economic growth is represented by the outward shift of the production possibilities frontier. So, with additional resources or an improvement in technology, the economy can produce more computers and more wheat or any combination in between. The shape of production possibilities frontier. Straight line means constant opportunity cost. The slope of a straight line is a constant. That is the example that we have seen. The opportunity cost of one computer is 10 tons of wheat. But that is not the reality. That was simplified to introduce the concept. The reality is that production possibilities frontiers are bowed out or concave, which reflects increasing opportunity cost. As more units of goods are produced, we need to give up increasing amounts of the other good produced. This is more a realistic or a real production possibilities frontier. And in this example, we are producing beer and mountain bikes. And as the economy shifts resources from the production of beer to mountain bikes, the PPF becomes steeper. And when the PPF becomes steeper, the opportunity cost of mountain bikes increases. So from point number A, most workers are producing beer, even those who are better suited to building bikes. So the cost of a mountain bike is less. Okay. But as you shift resources to produce more mountain bikes, at point number B, most workers are producing bikes. The few left in beer production are the best brewers. So trying to produce or producing more bikes would require shifting some of the best brewers away from beer production, causing a big drop in beer output. The cost has increased as we produce more and more mountain bikes. Now, the question is why the PPF might be bowed out. The PPF, or the production possibilities frontier, is bowed outward when different workers have different skills. The reality, resources are not adaptable to alternative uses. Okay? Different workers have different skills, different opportunity cost of producing one good in terms of the other. There is some other resource or mix of resources with varying opportunity cost. For example, different types of land suited for different uses. Resources are not adaptable to alternative uses. That is what causes the cost to increase as we produce more of one good. Economics, there are two branches of economics. Microeconomics is the study of how households and farms, how they make decisions and how they interact in markets. Macroeconomics, the study of the economy-wide phenomena, including inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. We also distinguish between positive statements and normative statements. When an economist is acting as a scientist, they make positive statements. They attempt to describe the world as it is. Okay, factual. That can be confirmed or refuted by examining the evidence. Okay, cause and effect. For example, minimum wage laws cause unemployment. That is a factual statement. That is a statement that you can go out there and verify. That's a positive statement. It is descriptive. Normative statements is what economists make when they are policy advisors. They're prescriptive. They attempt to improve the world, attempt to prescribe how the world should be. The government should raise minimum wage, should give you an indication that this is a positive statement. It's something that you cannot verify. You cannot use evidence to refute it or confirm it. It's somebody's value judgment. Okay. Let's look at active learning number 3. Which of these statements are positive and which are normative? Remember, positive, scientific, factual, descriptive. Normative is opinion, should, ought to be, how the world should work. So, number A, prices rise when government increases quantity of money. That is factual statement. It doesn't have to be right, but when somebody is making a factual statement, that is a positive. Number B, the government should print less money. The word should give you an indication that that is somebody's point of view. Somebody is trying to prescribe a certain course of action. Number C, a tax cut is needed to stimulate the economy. Needed should give you an indication. That is somebody indicating what his or her worldview is. Number D, an increase in the price of burritos will cause an increase in consumer demand for music download. That's a factual statement. It does not have to be right, but when somebody makes a descriptive statement, that is a positive statement. Okay, so the answer here, prices rise when the government increases the quantity of money. That is a positive statement. It describes a relationship. Could use data to confirm that. Number B, the government should print less money. Should. That is normative. This is a value judgment, cannot be confirmed or refuted. Number C, a tax cut is needed to stimulate the economy. Needed will give that statement out. That's a normative statement, another value judgment. Number D, an increase in the price of burritos will cause an increase in consumer demand for music downloads. That is a positive statement. It describes a relationship. And it is important to note that a statement need not be true to be positive. I can go out and say, the sky is red. And that's a positive statement. But you can go out there and refute it and verify. Okay? Why do economists disagree? Economists often give conflicting policy advice. Okay? They can disagree about the validity of alternative positive theories about the world. They may have different values and therefore different normative views about what policy should try to accomplish. Yet there are many propositions that about which economists agree. Okay. For example, let's look at this statement. Laws that limit the resale of tickets for entertainment and sports events make potential audience members for those events worse off on average. These economists were polled, and 80% agree. 12% are uncertain about it, 8% disagree. So you can see economists disagree on a good deal of issues. Here are some propositions about which economists agree and the percentage of economists who agree. A ceiling on rent reduces the quantity and quality of housing available. 93% of economists agree, which means rent ceiling or rent controls are a bad idea. Tariffs and import quotas usually reduce general economic welfare. 93% of economists agree. Free trade is a good thing. Um, uh, Barring trade or discouraging trade is a bad thing. The United States should not restrict employers from outsourcing work to foreign countries. 90% of economists agree. Free trade, let businesses produce where they want. Cross borders, free trade. The United States should eliminate agricultural subsidies. 85% of economists agree. Local and state governments should eliminate subsidies to professional sports franchises. Economists, 85% of economists agree. Cash payments increase the welfare of recipients to a greater degree than transfers in kind of equal cash value. 84% of economists agree. Give them cash, let them make a choice of what they want. A large federal budget deficit has an adverse effect on the economy. 83% of economists agree. The United States should not ban genetically modified crops. 82% of economists agree. Minimum wage increases unemployment among young and unskilled workers. 79% of economists agree. Government subsidies on ethanol in the United States should be reduced to eliminate or eliminated. 78% of economists agree. So you can see there's a good deal of issues over which economists agree. Summary: economists are scientists when they make appropriate assumptions and build simplified models to study the world. In this chapter, we studied two important models. The first one was the circular flow diagram, which is a model of the economy, how dollars travel through the economy, and the production possibilities frontier. Microeconomists study decision making by households and farms and their interactions in the marketplace. Macroeconomists study the forces and trends that affect the economy as a whole. A positive statement is an assertion about how the world is. Statistical, cause and effect, factual. That is an economist as a scientist. A normative statement is an assertion about how the world ought to be, should be, somebody's value, an economist trying to improve the world. That is an economist as a policy advisor. So, as a policy advisor, economists make normative statements. Economists sometimes offer conflicting advice because of differences in scientific judgments and differences in value. And there we are, ladies and gentlemen, we are on to chapter 3.